Hi, I'm Jennifer Quick with Soul Clarity Coaching, and this is my first of 2024 predictions video, the Canadian edition, as I am a Canadian. Little housekeeping to start, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. It helps me with the algorithms and it helps me get my word out, trying to spread love and hope for a new world that's emerging. Now, again, housekeeping, I've got to say this entire purpose of this video is for your entertainment, your thoughts, provoke thinking. Please do not take it as a guide for your life. You make your own choices. You are responsible for what you do. I am not telling anybody what to do, and I am not, be responsible for yourself. Whatever I say in this video, please take it if it vibes with you. Leave it if it doesn't, and if you like it, please share it. So anyhow, let's dive into it. So I'm just going to pull up here. I made notes doing this video. I made a whole lot of notes. Just let me find them. Here we go. So I've actually decided to break up this predictions video. Normally I would just do one that kind of covers the general everything that's going on, but 2024 is a very exciting year. And I wanted to, when I started working with this and I'll tell you my method. So what I do is I look at what's happening in the mainstream media news. I look at what's happening in the alternative news. I look at the world basis. I pull in information from a variety of sources around the world. I listen to people. I observe what's going on in our society. And then I always check back in with my spirit team. So in my spirit team, I have my spirit guides. I have different masters that work with me, archangels, angels, different alien species, galactic federations. I work with the Sun Court. So I go and explore in a lot of different areas before I finally come down to what it is that I want to share. So this year I've broken it up into 3 different videos. The first one is all about Canada because that's where I'm from, and I find there's not a lot of information coming out about Canada. So I'm going to start, and this is a big year for Canada. So I'm going to start with Canada. My next video is going to be a little more worldwide based. And then my third one is going to be really focusing in on the battle between light and dark that is unfolding and the evolutionary of at times. I have to be sensitive to the censorship. So there is a lot of censorship in Canada particularly. And as most of us know, and I do run into getting censored quite a bit, which is another reason why please subscribe to my channel and share my videos. Right? I need help with the algorithms. So the third video, I have actually created a membership site on my website, and the video will be accessible there. In that video, I will talk much more openly of not needing to worry about censorship. Moving into 2024, I am going to be building out my membership area so that I can speak without censorship. Okay. So, that being said, let's roll ahead. So, Canada. So, the first thing I've got a list here of different things I want to address. And the first thing I want to address, and it's not specifically to Canada, this is a world effect, and that is the pole shifting. There's a lot of talk about the poles shifting. There's a lot of predictions about a full-on flip of the poles. North becomes south, south becomes north. What is normally winter will now become summer, and vice versa. There's a lot of there's predictions right down to if this happened, the entire world would be destroyed and humanity would be wiped off of the earth. That does not ring true to me in the timelines that I work with. Sorry, I'm going to back up 1 second because I just remembered what I wanted to say about timelines. All 3 of these videos is taken from my perspective on my observation of the different timelines that are playing out. And there is never anything set in stone. Okay, because we have so much different timelines playing out, so many things influencing. What I am predictions are based on, this predictions and any prediction video you listen to is based on the available information on the current trajectory path from the perspective of the person who is doing the reading. So it can be very different from others. So it's always based on the current projection from the perspective of the person doing the reading prediction. So anyhow, that's where I am, and I am in Canada. So, okay, so pole shifting. So what is actually happening is our poles are not doing a full flip. What they are doing is adjusting themselves. Poles move, we're talking about the magnetic pole, okay? And the magnetic pole always has a movement. It's part of, it's tied into the spin of the earth as well as the rotation of the earth and everything. What is happening right now is the area in space that Earth is passing through has a different magnetic lineup than what we've been in previous, okay? Some Pisces into Aquarius is another aspect. There's a different magnetic alignment that's happening. And the Earth is shifting into alignment with that new magnetic field, okay? It is not such a drastic change that there's a complete flip, but it is making the normal movement much greater. Some people will even predict it to a percentage, like a 13% is probably the most common one I've heard. I don't really get a percentage. I don't work that way with this. I just get that its magnetic wobble is shifting at a greater increased variance than it has in the past of what we're normally used to. It is not catastrophic, but it is causing shifts on the tectonic plates, or is that how I say it? I don't know if that's how I say it. I probably got it wrong. But anyhow, the plates of the earth, the crust of the earth. The crust of the earth is shifting. This causes earthquakes, which cause tsunamis, and it can cause weather changes. And it can cause increase in CO2 levels as all these things come into play. It can also cause, well, that's the majority of what it is. So, and that's what we're seeing, and we've been seeing this for a while. This is not suddenly this year we're going to have this massive pulse, but no, this is actually over a period of time this is happening. And 2024 will see an increase in this magnetic adjustment in our field. And so what this will look like is an increase in earthquakes and tsunamis, particularly in this coming year. Flooding is a big one for this kind of year. And I see flooding not only being physical water like tsunamis and rising tides and water, where coming up from the underneath the surface where it wasn't necessarily before. I see that kind of shifts happening. But I also see this as an internal flood within people, a lot of tears. Now, from my perspective, tears are not a bad thing. What tears actually are is the chemical release of the emotions held in the body. This is a good thing because our physical bodies need to release the emotions that we have had trapped in our bodies. It's part of the healing process. And so I do see a lot of tears as well. And as we know, there's a lot of things, sadness and anger and also beauty and overwhelm can release tears. All right, it's not always bad. Tears can be released simply from pure joy. Okay? So I see a lot of that. Earthquakes, tsunamis, increased tears. I don't see a world destroyer, so let's just get that out. There's no world destroyer. Now, how is this going to do? And I'm going to go back to Canada. Majority from the Canadian perspective is particularly the West Coast, which is where I am. We are going to see it more. We're going to hear about it more in the media. We're going to see it on a world stage, that there's more earthquakes and weather and issues, tsunamis, hurricanes, things like that. Although the prairies in Canada, we'll see hurricanes right through Alberta, maybe even into BC and Ontario and that. Just that whole hurricanes are going to be hitting unexpected areas where we haven't seen them before. And there's going to be an increased activity in hurricanes. Earthquakes, again, nothing catastrophic, but certainly higher than we've ever seen before. Tsunamis are another thing. Now on the west coast, we don't really worry too much about tsunami. Well, on most of the coast. The coast will still get hit with it, or can be hit with it, but I don't see any major wipeouts happening. Vancouver Island will be hit with much more severe, rough ocean waves and that coming in. Same with the Atlantic. They're going to see a great increase in ocean tides and waves, but not like a massive wipeout half of BC. Okay, that's not happening. These earthquakes, we're going to feel them, but keep in mind, California lives with earthquake feelings every single day for the last, 50 years, I think. It's a common occurrence down there. Now, BC, we're not used to that, although in the last decade or so we felt a lot more. Well, this year is going to be an increased activity in those earthquakes, and we're going to feel them more. They're going to be reported more all throughout BC. Now, most destruction that you're going to see in BC and in Atlantic Canada is increased wave activities, so higher waves, bigger waves, that kind of thing hitting, possibly some seaside towns hitting hard, some serious flooding, maybe a few buildings wiped out, that kind of thing. Again, not a destroyer, but it ain't also easy. It's still what it is, right? I see that. I also see roads, a lot of broken roads, right? Which causes, particularly in Atlanta, I really see Atlantic Canada, which is the east coast of Canada, and the little islands and stuff like that. What I see is a lot of the roads causing can't even speak straight, causing infrastructure strain, let's say. So emergency vehicles, emergency response not being able to get to locations, delay in getting there, a break in supply chains, getting supplies there. So medical care could be reduced, like a break. Like, I'm not talking like the whole system collapse. I'm talking like a week where the road you can't get through. You can't get the emergency vehicle through. So any emergencies are going to have to be flown in, and that depends on the weather as well. And there is going to be an increase in weather as well, right? So, and storms and things like that. So a lot of anyhow. Boats, I also see boats being affected. So a fair number of boat crashings and sinking, so that's something to be aware of, affecting the fishing industry quite a bit, which Atlantic Canada does rely on. That kind of stuff. You're getting the picture, that type of thing, but not reaching far inland. Okay. What else do I have? I have notes here. So, possible destruction along the seaside cities and towns, and particularly infrastructure, power outages, road damage, transportation issues, health facility breaks, like emergency response breaks and delays. Not a wipeout, but worse than most years. That's what I've got. So then I'm going to go back here now. West Coast will feel earthquakes, larger but not destroyer. Rock slides, road damage, severe weather, flooding. I do see less fires in BC, although I do see quite a possibility of quite a big fire in along the border forests between BC and Alberta, particularly mid-province upwards. Okay. That's where I see it, mid-province particularly. I also see the lower highway in BC that runs, because when you're in the Fraser Valley, you have a choice of basically everything's funneled through Hope, and you divide into three directions. You're either going up the coast, you're going into Inland, or you're going over along the border. And I see the two of them having a lot of road closures and changes and things happening there, and that this lower one is going to be much more active, similar to how it was a lot more active when the big flooding happened. I think it was 2 years ago here in Lower Mainland. Similar to that kind of destruction. I also see protesting And I see a lot to do with the logging industry. So I'm not quite sure what that's about. I think it depends on a lot of how the politics are going and how that's changed. But I see a rise in protesting in regards to logging trucks and the logging industry. So I don't know about that. So that's what I see along, and what the lower road, I see a lot of the protests and road damage causing delays, and particularly the logging trucks being affected and the supply chains being affected. In the prairies, I see a lot of drought, poor crops, and a lot of conflict with the government, particularly that Western separation movement that's coming up. And a push towards oil and gas extraction. That's going to be really dialed up, the heat around that. And particularly northern Saskatchewan wanting to really increase their resources in that way, gas and oil production. I also see this, and I'm not quite sure how this is going, but I get this, how this is going to play. But I get this sense that Saskatchewan and Quebec are going to really notice each other and find common ground between them. Now, Quebec has always been more associated with Ontario and Atlantic Canada, but this year I feel like there's an identity thing that's happening between Saskatchewan and Quebec that's going to increase. They're going to relate to each other a lot more, and I kind of feel like it's tied around the shifting territories, let's say, of Canada. So there's a lot of things, identity shifts that are happening within Canada, and separatism, Western separatism has come up more. I don't see it actually happening, but I do see a increase from the provinces in demanding their autonomy. Is that the right word for it? Autonomy, like their self-direction, bringing them. And you see Alberta really stepping into that. So I see that more. And I see Quebec and Saskatchewan relating a lot on that basis. And then I see Montana, Manitoba. Montana's the U.S., good Lord. Manitoba. I see Manitoba having a real pull amongst its people between its identity with Ontario and its identity with Saskatchewan and the prairies and that whole life. And I feel like there's going to be a rise in protests and on the political front, particularly Manitoba, as Ottawa comes under criticism. Okay, and therefore, along with Ottawa's criticism comes the play of Ontario and Quebec with that. So I do feel a lot of controversy rising up there, which brings me, let's see, that brings me to the other political issues. But let me just make sure I'm catching everything here. So I also see an increase in the resentment between Ontario and Quebec. That's been on I see that rising, okay, and the rest of Canada. And Quebec and Ontario are seen as one by most of Canada, and Quebec is not that happy with it, as well as a lot of Ontarians. And they kind of are pushing the focus away from it being a province thing to being an Ottawa thing, because Ottawa's really coming under fire this year. So yeah, and oh, that's the other thing is I see Victoria and BC, which is so like far west and removed from Ottawa, but I see them speaking up more controversy on behalf of BC towards the federal government. So I'm not sure what's going to play out there because it's not traditionally where they lie, but I do see an increase in that. And more speaking up from Victoria. So now this brings me to the biggest, probably the most earth-shaking prediction for Canada coming into 2024, and that is I think there's going to be an election. And I think that election is going to happen this winter. I've been getting this feeling myself, particularly in March maybe the beginning of April, but I kind of feel like it's more the end of March. So we'll see. I feel it's going to come to a peak in January, and the election's going to be, there's going to be a vote of no confidence drawn in January. That's what I'm seeing happening. When they come back from Christmas break, that's what I see happening in Parliament. Now, and it's really hinging on the NDP. All right, because I mean, obviously the Conservatives, they would vote no confidence right now, but the NDP has been what has given the Trudeau government the power to be in power, because they don't actually have a majority in this country. They have a minority. And the only reason why they are the operating power is because the NDP has backed them. Okay, so if the NDP does, it really falls on the NDP as to whether or not we have an election. And I really think that Jagmeet is starting to see how his reputation is being tarnished by his connection with Trudeau and that propping up the government. And he needs to be seen as a little more independent. I think I'm seeing a lot of evidence that he's coming into that awareness. There's also, I don't follow a lot of politics. This is a lot of just gut feeling as to the bit that I do watch. But this winter there's going to be a lot of scandal revealed. Like Canadian politics is usually pretty boring. Most of us watch the US politics because it's got a lot more drama to it, right? But right now, pay attention to Ottawa and what's happening in the Canadian Parliament, because it is a huge drama scene. There's tons of scandals. There's our tarnished reputation. There's the world is kind of the world's not exactly rejecting Canada, but they are rejecting Trudeau, and we're seeing a lot of that happen. And you can look into it. I mean, remember, our media is censored. Our mainstream media is censored. So you've got to start looking at media, if you can, from other countries. So I like to look at India. I like to look at Sweden. I read Australian. I read English, like England. So, and I do read Russian as well. So I do get information from and I try to get some South American. I find I have the least amount of information coming from South America. Yeah, but anyhow, I try and find different sources all the time, and it gives me a different view of how the world is seeing Canada. And one of the things I've noticed a lot in the international news is this rejection of our government. Not the people. There's more of a sense of feeling sorry for the people of Canada, for the direction that our government has taken us and the amount of rights and things that are being removed from us, and from a world stage. We're seeing that even in the States, even in the woke left of the States, they still look at Canada and go, ooh, Canada's losing its freedom. Now that should scare a few people. But anyhow, this is not about scaring. I want to delete that, and it's going a little bit, again, I'll probably get censored. If anything's going to censor me, that's probably the one that's going to censor me. So anyhow, I think there's going to be election. Hopefully I don't get censored. There's going to be an election. There's going to be a lot of scandals. Our reputation on the world stage is going to come into question. Like, we're going to start realizing what's happened with it. Border issues, immigration issues, those are all going to really come up because we do not have the infrastructure to support what we're welcoming into this country. And it's one thing to have our borders open and be very welcoming, but and to bring in people to our country, I'm all for it. But it doesn't do anybody any good when there's no infrastructure to handle it, because a lot of them are leaving. So really, our border issues are going to open up. They get overshadowed by what's happening in the US and their border dramas, but Canada has its own border dramas, and those are really going to come to the surface as well. And of course, unemployment, bankruptcies, homelessness, drug overdosing, both in the street drugs as well as pharmaceutical drugs. All that is going to come to light. The food bank demands that are going to skyrocket. All of this is going to be the winter. We're really going to hear it through the winter and feel it and see it. This winter is going to be hard on the heart for a lot of people, because remember, you're placed exactly where you're supposed to be to go through the evolutionary times that we're going through. And personally, I want to state how thankful I am to be in Canada and particularly Western Canada, because my timeline and my struggles that I'm facing, and compared to what the rest of the world is facing on this evolution, I am so thankful. So thankful. I have a pretty smooth ride compared to what some people are. And so really look at where you are and what your role is, because you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Okay, experiencing what you're supposed to be experiencing in order to contribute to the evolution of all of mankind, all of humankind. So anyhow, all that this winter, it's going to be, we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of homelessness, a lot, and with homelessness comes the awareness of our weather and how cold we get, right? Climate change is also going to be a big topic, and it's really going to, but there's also going to be a lot of questioning around the narrative of climate change. What is really causing it? How much is human contribution really contributing to it? And the things that government has put in place to combat climate change, is it really helping? Is it really doing anything? Who's getting away with who are the major contributors, and how are they getting away with still contributing? And just sort of all that narrative is really going to come under fire of judgment. And a lot of people are going to wake up to how much they're being gaslit. Okay, so pay attention to that. Really dial into the climate change, the homelessness. You'll see it in the streets. Now, there's this funny thing that you're going to see as well, because there's a lot of increase on drug use, and with that comes the overdosing and death that goes along with it, the death of homeless, the freezing to death, all of that's going to happen, as well as healthcare, and that our healthcare is not meeting the needs of the people in many, many cases. You're going to see a lot of that. But it's like there's going to be two worlds emerging. You've got one world that is in this mass amount of suffering where the medical system is failing them, their jobs are gone, they're in the streets, they're at food banks, the economy is crashing, like there's a large crash. But then there's going to be this other side where you're going to see new businesses opening, collectives coming out and working with people more. You're going to see different areas of town revitalized. Like, you're going to shift. There's going to be areas that are really thriving. And it's going to be in such contrast to this other aspect. But, obviously it's a good thing. There's going to be a shift in direction. And, so I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm starting to go into more of a let me go back to my notes. Okay, so at the same time, there's going to be an increase in new businesses, an increase in self-employed, collectives, and local trade, local economies, outside of the system type of stuff. Okay, you're going to see a lot more of that. April feels like an upswing in hope. So as dark as the winter feels, April is going to have an upswing in hope. There is two big astrology events. There's one on the 8th, and I can't remember what exactly it is, but the one on the 20th is really big, and it is the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction with Taurus on April 20th. I had to write it down because I'm not an astrologer, but that was really coming up to me, so I did a quick Google going, what is happening in astrology on April 20th, or there, like in the end of April, and this is what came up as April 20th. And what this marks in the astrology is it's like a new beginning. It's a new year, but it's also astrology, like it feels like a new beginning, and that's exactly what's happening. So April is going to be this real awareness of where we are, a revealing of truth, but which can be very harsh, but at the same time, there's going to be hope, and there's going to be a feel of what the potential of the future can be. It's going to be a really high manifesting period of time as well. So make sure that you are taking the time to figure out what vision of a new world you want to be living in. And that's when you're going to be planting the seeds, is that April 20th. That's a big, big time shift. And it's not the particular day, it's the season. You want to start laying those seeds well before that astrology. You want to take advantage of the energy rush that's going to come through on that date to propel you and moving forward. Okay, it's sort of like a peak time. And then, so moving after April 20th, which is a huge, and that new beginning of April 20th starts a cycle that's supposed to last 20 years. I get mixed on it, 14 to 20 years, but so there you go, 14 to 20. It's definitely the next 10, okay? As a new, it's emerging a new world, new beginning, something starting, right? And I think this is the start of restructuring and healing from the chaos we've been revealing over the last 4 years. It's a start in a new set of 4 years where a lot of truth, a lot of reshifting, a lot of revealing, and a lot of hope. How are we going to do this differently is what's going to come out. It's the starting to organize the chaos, revealing of what the chaos actually is, truth, and revealing to it. Anyhow, I'm rambling. So there we go. So April 20th, huge astrology shift, new beginning of the year for the next 20. It is a transition towards the future. Many could say that it is the birth moment of the new world. And just like birth, it could reveal a messy cleanup and recovery, a high emotion, and an excitement for the future. When I downloaded this and pulled this together, I was reminded of a very personal story, and that is the moment I became a parent. Now, there's always controversy because I do believe that from the moment of conception, you start the process of becoming a parent, but it's the moment of birth that you shift in that fully. You fully shift into the materialization of now I am a parent. So when my son was born and I was going through the birth process, it was horrible. And everything that a lot of things went wrong. It was highly stressful. We almost lost him. There was a great medical intervention and everything that was required. And I remember as I was going through that, I'm very close to my husband, as I've mentioned before. We have a huge soul contract to be together in this life. We are soulmates, in the deepest sense. And yes, I remember him holding my hand through all of it but there was this point where I was no longer with him, and I was at the end of everything, and I just started praying to die. I didn't want the baby to die, but I wanted to die. I just wanted it to end. And it was a complete surrender in that moment, which was the transition point. But I felt like I was in the depths of hell. And then there's this pause that happens, and this is what I kind of feel like April might be, or March, April might be this pause, or maybe even on a bigger scale, we're in it right now a bit. But there was this pause for me in the birth process. And it was when the baby was out, and it was probably only for a second or two, but the baby was out, and there was silence. And that's what I remember is the silence. And then I remember hearing the cry, his very first voice, his very first sound, and it was a cry. And in that split second that noise hit my ears, it was like I was in a slingshot from the depth of hell to the top of heaven. If I can imagine what the top of heaven, to be united with divine source in the ultimate space of love, it was that moment. That's the birth process to me. Now, having my consecutive child was a different experience because I already was a parent. That was the transition for me, to going from me to an individual to me as a parent, welcoming a new soul into this world. So anyhow, that is kind of what I feel like is going on this spring. Because in that moment that you reach the top of heaven, the future is amazing. Every potential of the future. And if any parent looks in their child's eyes that moment that they're born, that's often what they'll talk about, is you see the future, and it's glorious in that moment. And that's kind of where we're at. Anyhow, I need to get back to this little side share. Let me just see now. I want to keep this on Canada, so I'm going to talk more in another video about business and world stage. I've said that there's going to be an election. There's a lot of shifting that's going to happen, a lot of truth being revealed. Canada, I'm just going to mention briefly that the economy, the way it's going to shift in Canada, and the answers that are going to come, the rebuild that's going to happen coming spring, this is the timeline that I see and that I'm choosing to be on, is actually going to be an example for the world, because it is the direction the world's going to be, and we're going to actually be the spotlight. We're going to show them how it's done. And because it's part of the Canadian spirit. There's also going to be, and this is something else I really want to point out, there is going to be a huge shift in the identity of Canada. Over the last few years, we kind of have lost our identity. We even have had the politicians coming out saying that Canada doesn't have one, which I don't believe. Canada, if you look at Canada's history, we have been accepting, this land has been accepting immigration from all over the world for thousands and thousands of years. Whether it be in our native community, obviously it was through our native community for a very long time, and then right to colonizations and all of that went through. We really have been a multicultural country. And one of the beautiful, beautiful things about Canada is that we don't seek to override your beliefs. We seek to create a country where it's safe for you to have your culture, right? Where there's also, I also have talked about this many times, in that the Canadians sorry. Canadians are not sorry in the same way that they're apologizing when other people say that they're sorry. That whole Canadian sorry thing, we're not apologizing for anything, really, and accepting blame for anything or anything. What we are sorry is, oops, me bumped up against you in resistance and conflict. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just being me, and I bumped up and I offended you, and for that, I'm sorry. I'll rein in my beliefs, you rein in your beliefs, and we carry on. Okay? Because we really value the diversity of this land, and that's something else that's going to be coming into awareness as we really look at our identity. We are an incredibly diverse country from sea to sea. It's incredible how much terrain changes and the people change. And the other thing that's going to come into the realization, as we realize this diversity that we have, we are also going to realize how connected we are. Doesn't matter. You think of how huge this country is, and yet we're all interrelated. We all have connections to each other, and that has been a really big part of Canada. And it right down to our politics, where we've got when one province is doing well, it supports the people of another province who may not be. We come together in our diversity, in our connection, our unity. And that identity is going to come back. Okay, that's going to start to be recognized again. Again, these are the seeds that are being planted this year. It's not going to miraculously convert everything within a year. But it is the seeds for what's laying forward. So this year is really about laying seeds for our future that we want. So come into spring, there's going to be this spring and early summer, there's going to be this really rise up in future hope and how are we going to change things and moving forward. That's going to be a big shift. There's going to be less travel abroad and more travel within. And then come August, I feel like we really start to see ourselves with the world stage. It kind of bursts our bubble and comes into our awareness, where we're going to have a lot of focus on the world stage. And we're really going to have to decide who we are on the world stage as a country. And that's going to start in August. And of course, we're going to be highly affected by the media coverage of the election in the United States. I really, really, really strongly encourage everybody to remind themselves on a regular basis next fall that we are Canada, not the US. We are our own country. We have our own identity. Our politics are not the same as their politics. Our right wing is sure as the heck not the same as their right wing, and our left ain't their left. Okay? We are a different country. We are different people. And really remember that, because we're going to see a lot of the ugly. That election in the fall is going to be really ugly, and it's going to reveal, and again, this is I go into this on the world basis, but it's going to have an effect in Canada strongly because we're neighbors, and it's going to push us to separate our identity as to who we really are. And that's really going to push us into identity crisis. Flooding, again, I do see a lot of storms physically in Canada, right across coast to coast, a lot of storms for the fall. Okay, I do see a heavy winter and a heavy fall for storm activity, as well as that's when I see more of the earthquakes and tsunamis and that kind of thing. I see it more in the fall than I do in the winter. Winter, I feel like it's more weather related, like heavy rains and snow and cold temperatures, right? And shifting where snow in places we're not used to there being snow, and no snow where there usually is snow, like that kind of stuff. Which again is all back to the pole shift. So that I see, but fall is going to be really about our identity, our economy. There's going to be a lot of rebuilding of our economy. There's going to be a lot of coming in. New technology is really going to start emerging in 2024. AI is going to come into question, and how it's being used. That's going to start in the spring, and it's really going to peak in the fall. Right? Come August, it's really going to peak on how we use AI. And again, I'll have more of that in my next video when I talk more about the world stage. But here in Canada, and again, now the movement, I just want to point out, because Canada's going to be leadership in this, is that our economy is going to be, AI is going to be more integrated in it, but at the same time, the demand is going to be more personal. We want more interperson relationship. We want to deal with a human. We're tired of dealing with an automation. Okay? And there's going to be a push in that direction. I want to talk to a live person. I don't want to talk to a recording. Even though this is recorded and you're listening to this, and I appreciate that, I will be doing more lives in the new year for that reason. So anyhow, I think that's all I want to... just one other thing that I want to mention in this video, because Canada is really, really well known for its talent. We have amazing musicians, we have incredible artists, and we have some of the best comedians in the world. And all of those are going to be active. They're going to start rising up. Canadian talent is really going to start a grassroots movement. And that's going to start here in Canada. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to leave this video. Thank you for listening to it. Drop any comments, like the video, share the video. Please subscribe to my channel. Like I said, look out for the other two videos, which I will list down below. And I'll also put in the membership site down below. Love you all. Mwah. See you in the new year.